Chapter 5. It's just as important. Dash probably could have hidden it from her parents if not for the black eye. Windfall's parents never tried to get in touch with them, and none of the other injuries were too noticeable. But even if it was just one injury, that was all it took. As it turned out, they did care that she was still fighting. They threatened to pull her out of flight school per their original agreement, although they didn't actually do anything to make good on that threat. That wasn't too surprising. Far more unexpected was that when she went to her room, she realized she didn't actually care if they did. While she loved flying, she could do it without flight school. She'd already learned everything they could teach her years ago, then somewhere along the way, it had just become a constant effort in being the best. Except she was the best. For as long as she had been in flight school, she'd been the star pupil. She was really in it for something else, but it still took a black eye to get her parents' attention. Along with the threat to pull her out of school, they'd also grounded her for that. Not that it mattered, not when they were never home to make sure she wasn't disobeying their rules. Still, she took it as an excuse to sleep in. No point in waking up early for class. In fact, she decided she could get used to sleeping in until noon. Although she wasn't supposed to leave the house, there was no pony home to stop her, so she went out for lunch. She needed to do something to kill time while she waited for practice to end, after all, and going to the place that Gale Force got pizza for them after every race seemed appropriate. It really wasn't the same on her own, though. She wanted to enjoy it one more time while she was still part of the team, but she knew that it was only a technicality. It killed time and fills her stomach, though. It was almost time for practice to end when she left the pizzeria, so she made her way to the track. They were still finishing up, so she sat on the bleachers and watched. Unsurprisingly, Windfall was nowhere to be seen. Dash could only hope he'd be back in action before too long. The team needed him now more than ever, and he was going places with his flying as long as he stuck with it. Gale Force noticed her as she watched, but he ignored her in favor of focusing on the rest of the team. That suited Dash fine. She hadn't wanted to disrupt things after all. She realized that in all the years she'd been in flight school, she never really watched the other athletes she trained with. It made her wonder how much better the team could have been if she had. A lot of ponies made simple mistakes that she could have helped them with, if only she ever cared about anything other than her own personal achievements. She waited until every pony had finished and Gale Force gave his team pep talk, then she flew over to him. He sounded worn out as he skipped the friendly greeting. "I hope you don't expect this to count as showing up for class." "No, coach, I just want to talk." Gale Force looked at her, clearly taking note of her eye. "All right, come into my office." As she followed him, Dash noticed all eyes were turned towards her. She just grinned confidently as every pony whispered. In particular, she noticed Summer Rain was giving her a look that might kill a lesser pony. But as Gale Force closed the door behind them, everything faded away. There was only Dash and her coach. She knew this would be hard, but she'd made up her mind. "So I'm guessing this has something to do with the black guy," Gale Force said as he sat at his desk and gestured for her to sit across from him. "Sort of," Dash said, sitting down herself. Gale Force frowned. "And I'm guessing it also has something to do with why Windfall didn't show up today either." Dash rubbed her neck. The more she had time to think about it, the more she regretted everything that had happened with Windfall. "Yeah, that would be my fault," he sighed. "So you want to tell me what happened?" Dash grinned. "Not really. Whatever story he decides on, I back it 100%. Even in light of the circumstances, Gale Force couldn't help smiling just a little at that. "Okay, we'll leave that be for now. So what do you want to talk to me about then?" Dash took a deep breath. This was it. "I'm dropping out." "You're what now?" He wasn't smiling anymore. "I'm sorry, coach, but I thought this through," Dash said, resolutely meeting his eyes. The least she could do was stand proud and tell him her decision to his face. "I realized I don't want what I thought I wanted, and what I do want, well, it's not here." Gale Force folded his forelegs. "And there's nothing I can do to stop you?" "No, sir." Well then, I hope you have a plan at least. Sort of, Dash said. I... I have the start of one anyway. Galeforce leaned back and didn't say anything for a moment. Dash was sure he was going to protest, but he surprised her by smiling instead. Well, that's not exactly reassuring, is it? But you know, your dad said something like that to me around 18 years ago, when he told me Firefly was pregnant. I can imagine what your relationship with him is like, so I'm not too sure if this is the type of thing you'd want to hear, but you're a lot like him. Dash bowed her head. It's kind of weird. Feels like you know him so much better than I do. You know, he grew up dirt poor. Used to bring him around my place just to get a good meal in him from time to time. Dash looked up at him. Her dad had never told her that before. Firefly was right around your age when she got pregnant, maybe even a little younger. I didn't know her as anything other than Blaze's mere friend, so I can't speak for her, but your dad was determined that you'd never have the life he did. I guess he did that. If there was one thing Dash could say about her parents, it was that they always provided for her. They lived in a nice house, got her enrolled in a good school, bought her almost whatever she asked for, and she had never once questioned it. Galeforce nodded. He was 17 when he moved out, got married, and threw himself into a career to pay for you and your mom. I'm not making excuses for him not being around, but he was doing the best he could at what he thought was the most important thing for you. I think if you can learn from his mistakes, you'll do alright. Dash grinned. You know, I think you were right before. I probably should have talked to you ages ago. Galeforce grinned back. Oh, I was definitely right. But I think you figured out what you needed to on your own, eventually. I'd wish you luck in whatever you're planning, but you don't need it. You'll be the best at it. You don't have second place in you. Dash nodded. Thank you, Coach. But you know, if it takes longer than you think to get your plans off the ground, I'm always here if you need anything. My offer to talk still stands, and if you need bits, well, I could always use an assistant. Work on the attitude and the job's yours. I'll keep it in mind, but the truth is I don't think what I'm looking for is here in Cloudsdale at all. I see. Well, the rest of the world better be ready for Rainbow Dash. He stood up and opened the door. As Dash stood up to walk out, he held out a hoof to bump hers. Instead, she threw a foreleg around him in a hug. Thank you, Coach, for everything. Don't mention it. Now get out there and kick some tail. Dash saluted. Will do. She flew off with him waving goodbye. In a way, the hard part was over. She still had to tell her parents, but these days Gale Force had become more of a parental figure than her actual parents anyway, even with the added perspective he gave her for them. She thought about spending the rest of the day roaming Cloudsdale, but when it really came down to it, she just wanted to go home. She passed the remaining daylight hours by cleaning her room, which she hadn't done any time in recent memory. As usual, her dad came home first. She waited until her mom came home before going downstairs to talk to them, though. No need to go through the whole thing twice. When she met them in the living room, they both looked dead tired. She always thought about how they weren't around, but she hadn't really stopped to think about how hard they were working all the time. Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you, Dash said. Rainbow Blaze rubbed his eyes. What's up, Squirt? He sounded exhausted, but still smiled as he talked. Well... Dash took a breath and fixed her face into a determined expression. I want to move to Ponyville. Rainbow Blaze and Firefly exchanged looks and sat up straighter. But where is this coming from, Dashie? Firefly asked. Dash bowed her head. There were so many reasons she had to do this. How could she ever explain it? When it came down to it, this was just something she knew she had to do. I want to see more of the world than just Cloudsdale. Maybe Cloudsdale really is the best place in Equestria, but it's not all there is. Ponyville's not that far, and I can stay with Fluttershy. Technically, she hadn't actually asked Fluttershy, but she'd be welcome. She hoped. Firefly looked like she was holding back tears. This is just so sudden. Why didn't you tell us about this before? Dash bit back tears herself. She had thought she'd be ready for this. You're never around. I'm sorry, but I can't talk to you about what I want when I never get to talk to you at all. Firefly did start crying at that, although she held herself together pretty well. Just a few silent tears and a little excessive blinking. Rainbow Blaze wrapped a foreleg around her shoulder. You're too young. How about after you graduate flight school? I'm 17, Dad. Same age you were when you moved out with Mom. Rainbow Blaze frowned. How do you know about that? Gilforce told me. He also thinks I can handle this. Well, he implied it at least. That was close enough. I left to build a life for us, and I spent it making sure you didn't have to do the same thing. Dash looked away from her parents. I know, Dad, and I'm really grateful for everything you've done for me. But I need to learn to stand on my own and figure out what my role in life is supposed to be. Blaze looked like he might argue some more, but Firefly had already grabbed her daughter in a hug. Promise me that no matter what, you'll come straight home to us if things don't work. I know you're just as stubborn as your dad and me, but please, never be ashamed to come home. Whether you find what you're looking for or not, you'll never be a failure to us. Even Dash was starting to blink away tears. I know, Mom. I promise. I'll come home if things don't work out. Once they broke apart, Rainbow Blaze pulled her into another hug. Well, you're not going to be homeless, that's for sure. You can tell Fluttershy that you'll only be staying there long enough to move into your own place, because tomorrow you and me are going house hunting. Dash shook her head. Dad, please don't. I know you have to make it on your own, and as much as I respect that, I'll be damned if we can't give you a head start. Consider it something I need to do as your father. We'll pay for the down payment in the first 3 months, which should give you plenty of time to get on your hooks. Thanks, Dad, Dash said. He ruffled her mane. You'll be all right. You are my daughter, after all. Dash grinned as she stepped back. Well, I need to get going if I'm going to make it there tonight. Firefly's ears drooped. You're leaving tonight? Dash looked away. She hadn't expected her parents to get so emotional. This was supposed to be easier. But that was exactly why it was so important to leave now, before she could change her mind. I'm sorry, She didn't know what she was going to say, but she didn't have to worry about it. She was stopped from answering by her mom's hoof on her shoulder. When she looked up, both her parents held her in a group hug. I love you, Dashie, Firefly said. We both do, Blaze added. Dash nodded and swallowed back her tears. I love you both too. They pulled away and her parents nodded. She flew upstairs and grabbed her bag. She had been so excited for this earlier, but now... No, I have to do this. She walked down the stairs slowly, noticing every detail and every memory in the house. She was surprised at how many things came up in her memories. So many things that had lain buried beneath her resentment towards her parents, only now coming to light as she came to terms with her lot in life. When she got to the bottom of the stairs, both her parents were waiting. They smiled encouragingly, so Dash smiled back. Even as she felt a tear roll down her cheeks, she still smiled for her parents. She wanted to say something, but no more words came to mind. She walked to the door and turned back to see her parents still smiling through their own tears, wishing her the best in the new path her life was taking. She shook her head, wiped her eyes, and went through the door. Goodbye, she said to no pony in particular. With nothing else to hold her back, she took to the air. She knew where Ponyville was, but only in that she'd seen it on a map, so it would be best to avoid waiting around any longer. She was already leaving late for the uncertain journey as it was. She knew Fluttershy could make the trip without much difficulty, and she was a much stronger flyer. Still, she did wish she had taken Fluttershy up on visiting Ponyville before she decided to try flying there solo. She had always been too busy with flight practice, though. Well, no more. Fluttershy had put Dash first for years, and now it was time to turn the tables. From now on, Fluttershy was number one. It was well into the night by the time Dash finally saw Ponyville. It was much less impressive than she imagined, though she supposed she was just looking at some outskirt area. There were only two buildings around, and a lot of what she knew were trees based on some pictures she'd seen. She descended slowly, putting her hooves on the ground almost cautiously. She stared at the dirt, moving it around with her hoof. She inspected her hoof and was surprised to see it covered in dust. She flapped a wing, moving around a bunch at once, and watched it float through the air. She bent down for a closer look and regretted it as some of the dust got in her eye. It's just dirt. Dash jumped into the air and hovered as she turned around to see an orange mare with blonde mane and weird hat grinning at her. She slowly descended, feeling a little embarrassed by what must have been a ridiculous display. Yeah, I'm from Cloudsdale. We don't have dirt there. Now that she was on the ground, she noticed the other mare didn't have any wings. It looked odd. Wings was such a natural part of a pony. It was like seeing some pony with only two legs. Well, in that case, welcome to Ponyville. Although you ain't exactly in town yet. Name's Applejack, and this here's Sweet Apple Acres. Applejack gestured around them, and Dash realized this must be a farm. It was another thing they didn't have in Cloudsdale, since there was no way to grow things in clouds. And if this was a farm, that meant only one of the buildings was a house, while the other had to be a barn. Dash's need to piece all of that together would look weird to an Earth pony, though, so she just grinned. I'm Rainbow Dash. I'm looking for a friend of mine, a Pegasus named Fluttershy. You wouldn't happen to know her, would you? Dash offered a hoof before realizing it was covered in dirt. Applejack didn't seem to mind and bumped it anyway. Yellow coat and more pink hair than any pony should know what to do with? Yeah, I reckon I've met her. She turned around and walked towards the farmhouse, gesturing for Dash to follow. Come inside and sit a spell. I'll get you a drink and give you some directions to her house. Dash could immediately see what Fluttershy had meant. In Cloudsdale, most ponies believed that Earth ponies were all rude because they were jealous that they couldn't do magic or fly, but Applejack seemed alright. As they walked, a creaky voice spoke up. Did you figure out what was going on with that loony pony, Applejack? She ain't loony, Granny. She's just never seen dirt before. She's visiting from Cloudsdale. An elderly mare stepped out from what looked like a living room. At this hour? Isn't it a little late for company? Not visiting us. She's looking for that Pegasus Rarity brought over the other day. She's just stopping in to catch her breath before heading out again. Applejack led Dash into the kitchen, where Dash sat at a small table. She looked around and noticed how full the place was, how homey everything looked. While the rustic look was far from Dash's personal taste, she would have given anything to have grown up in a house like this. Here, Sweet Apple Acres specialty cider, Applejack said, setting a glass in front of Dash. She eyed the drink skeptically. It smelled kind of like apple juice, but it was much darker, an ugly brown color that didn't look appetizing at all. But since she didn't want to offend the pony helping her, she took a drink. Her eyes went wide as she set down the cup. This is the best thing I've ever tasted. She downed the rest of it, making sure to get every last drop. Applejack laughed and refilled her glass. I'm glad you think so, but try not to drink it so fast. Dash nodded and drank her second cup much slower, savoring the flavor. While she drank, Applejack gave her directions to Fluttershy's cottage. Of course, you could skip all that and fly there if you wanted. Should be off that away. Applejack pointed to the east, slightly northward. If that fails you, feel free to come back here. Barn's open. It's not the fanciest place to lay your head, but it's not so bad. I've taken more than a few naps there myself, and it'll get you out of the elements. In the morning, if you're still around, I'll take you to Fluttershy's myself. Thanks, but aren't you worried? I mean, you don't even know me. She'd never get an offer like that in Cloudsdale. Applejack scrunched up her face as if she was studying the newcomer, then smiled and waved her hoof. Nah, you seem alright, even with the black eye. Besides, you're friends with Fluttershy, and that girl couldn't hurt a fly. Dash smiled. Fluttershy was definitely right. This place is way more friendly than Cloudsdale. We do what we can, but it's already 10:15, so if you want to catch Fluttershy while she's still awake, you best get going. Right, thanks again. Dash stood up and walked to the door. No problem. Come on by in the day sometime. Stop in to see me at the market and let me know how everything's going for you. You got it. Dash waved goodbye as she took off. Since it was already late and she'd have a good view from the air, she opted for the direct route. She flew over a lot more trees, many of which had bright red apples on them. That was almost enough for Dash to land and check them out. She'd only ever seen apples after they were picked and ready to eat, after all. But she had to put Fluttershy first. In the morning, the two of them could check out the town, and Fluttershy could show her everything there was to see about life on the ground. It didn't take her long to fly to the cottage. She was a little disappointed that she still hadn't seen any of the main town itself, but there'd be time to see her new home later. Besides, that was another thing she could do with Fluttershy. Approaching the door, she noticed all the lights were off. I really hope this is the right place. She glanced around, noticing some weird fluffy thing staring at her from one of those round tree things that were only as tall as a pony. Yeah, 'cause there must be tons of cottages on the outskirts of town. She knocked on the door before she could second guess herself any more. Seconds stretched into minutes as she waited. Maybe it was the wrong place? Maybe Fluttershy was asleep? No, she was too light of a sleeper. She'd wake up. Dash knocked a second time and waited some more. She was about to head back to Sweet Apple Acres when she heard Fluttershy on the other side of the door. Who is it? It's Rainbow Dash. Can I crash here tonight? Before she had even finished the question, Fluttershy had already opened the door and was beaming at her. Of course, come in. As they walked inside, Fluttershy turned on the light. I'm so happy to see you, but why are you here so late? She turned and gasped as she noticed Dash's black eye. Oh my goodness, what happened to you? Dash tried to say it was nothing, but Fluttershy's gaze melted the smile off her face. Reluctantly, she told the whole story without leaving anything out, asking about the rumors, confronting Windfall, the talk they had after the fight, her parents finding out about it, quitting flight school, telling her parents she wanted to move to Ponyville, even meeting Applejack. It felt good to get it all out, even the parts she wasn't proud of. But once she was done, Fluttershy looked horrified. You You gave up everything because some ponies thought you were gay? Dash shook her head. No, there was a lot more to it. I mean, ponies have been calling me gay since as long as I can remember. I guess it did piss me off they were calling you gay too. Fluttershy didn't look any better. So you dropped out of school and left your home because some pony said that I'm gay? Seriously, there were a lot of reasons, Dash said, baffled that Fluttershy was hanging so much on one detail. But that is why you got into a fight with one of your best friends. Well, yeah, I guess so, she grinned and shrugged. But even he said he deserved a smack for it. I'm not gonna sit there and let Pony say things about you like that, Shy. Fluttershy shook her head and fell onto her couch. You, Dash, you shouldn't do things like that. I know, I was dumb. But hey, me and Windfall are cool now. So that's what counts, right? Dash smiled hopefully. Fluttershy buried her face in her hooves. You should go back to Cloudsdale. Tell every pony it was a mistake. Not a chance, Dash said. I mean, if you don't want me here, that's fine. I'll go stay with Applejack tonight, and tomorrow I'll see if she'll let me stay until I get my own place. But I've made up my mind. I'm sticking around. Fluttershy looked up. Dash was shocked to see tears on her face. It's not that. I just... Fluttershy, don't cry. Dash sat near her and tentatively wrapped a foreleg around her. She wasn't sure she'd ever get used to hugging so much. Fluttershy looked up at her. You shouldn't sit so close to me. Dash grinned and scooted away. Since when do you care about doing gay stuff like that? Besides, there's no one here to say anything anyway. Somehow, Dash had said the exact wrong thing, because Fluttershy's few tears exploded into full-blown bawling. I'm sorry, she said repeatedly through her sobs. Dash sat bewildered. Apparently hugging was a bad idea, and whenever she talked things got worse. Usually when Fluttershy cried, there was some pony Dash could hit for causing it, but she doubted it would help either of them very much if she began punching herself. She couldn't sit here doing nothing while her best friend was such a wreck, but nothing was the only option she had left. Eventually, the worst of the tears subsided and Fluttershy wiped her eyes. Dash wanted to ask for an explanation, but was afraid to say the wrong thing. Eventually, Fluttershy spoke up on her own. I don't deserve a friend like you. Taking a risk, Dash asked, What do you mean? Fluttershy sighed. You're probably going to hate me. Once you know, you'll never want to see me again. Okay, that's probably the dumbest thing you've ever said, Dash said. I mean, you're my best friend, Shy. I won't hate you, ever. Fluttershy smiled a little. Thanks, Dashy. But you only think that because you don't know. Alright, so tell me, then I can prove I'm right by not hating you. Dash grinned. Because I'm awesome, so I'm always right. Fluttershy took a deep breath. Well, one day Rarity and I were talking. She asked what kind of stallions I liked. And I couldn't tell her because I didn't know. Then when I thought more about it, Fluttershy's voice barely came out as a squeak as she finished. I realized I didn't know because I don't like stallions at all. You don't like romantically, you mean? Dash asked. Fluttershy nodded as she stared away from Dash. So then, mares? Fluttershy's head sunk lower. I don't know. Maybe. At least a little. Dash face huffed. I'm officially the biggest jerk in the world. She scooted closer to Fluttershy and pulled her up so that they could hug again. I'm sorry, Shy, for all the stupid shit I said. Fluttershy sat limp, not returning Dash's hug. Dash, you shouldn't. Undeterred, Dash kept holding her. Hey, I don't give hugs often. You better take it while you can get it. Slowly, Fluttershy put her forelegs around Dash. You don't hate me? No, of course not. Dash grinned and pulled away, but kept one foreleg around her friend. Hey, I was right. I'm so awesome. Fluttershy giggled, then looked away sadly. I'm sorry, you probably don't want to stay here anymore. Dash tapped her chin. I could sleep in a barn. Or I could hang with my best friend ever, she shrugged. Yeah, I think I'll stay here. Fluttershy looked almost happy, but still seemed scared, like she was expecting Dash to change her mind at any time. You really want to stay friends? Of course, Dash said. But you don't like ponies like me. Fluttershy looked like she might cry again. It's not. Dash shook her head and sighed. You want to know why I said all that stuff? Because the first time I ever heard the word gay was some stupid little colt using it as an excuse for why I was faster than him. I didn't know what it meant, so at the time I just thought it was an insult. It didn't help that adults got all weird when I asked about it. And then even when I did know, ponies still kept calling me gay as an insult. I was dumb for going along with it. I knew better. I just didn't really think about it, I guess. It's not a good reason, and I'm sorry. Forgive me? Fluttershy smiled, a real smile with no other feelings mixed in. Of course I do, Dash. You know, the only reason I even went by Dash was because I thought Rainbow sounded gay. That was dumb, and since I'm starting over in Ponyville anyway, maybe I'll start going by Rainbow instead. She nudged Fluttershy. Well, you can call me whatever you want, though. Alright, Rainbow. Fluttershy giggled. Something occurred to Rainbow. It was probably best to get it into the open now while they were being all emotional. So that night you slept at my house and you tried to get me to sleep in the bed. You really weren't coming on to me, right? Totally cool either way, I just want to make sure we don't have any more secrets from each other. Fluttershy rolled her eyes. Sorry to hurt your ego, but no, I wasn't. I don't think of you like that. Cool, 'cause I lied. That would actually be really weird. but not because you're a mirror or anything. Fluttershy looked kind of hurt. Then why? Because, well, Rainbow rubbed at her neck. This was about to get super sappy and she'd probably have to deal with another hug. Alright, so like I said, there were a lot of reasons why I decided to come to Ponyville. But the biggest is because I realized something. Maybe my parents aren't as bad as I always thought they were, and I'll always love them because, they're my parents. But they still weren't ever really there for me, except financially. I've been trying to impress them for years, but for what? Rainbow smiled at Fluttershy. That's something I've been thinking about a lot lately, though. The real thing that hit me was yesterday after the fight with Windfall. He asked me why we were so close, and I told him we were like sisters, but that wasn't really right. Because really, you're not like my sister, you are my sister. My parents might be related to me by blood, but we're related by choice, and that's just as important. Instead of trying to get them to notice me, I want to stay close with the family that's always been there for me. Fluttershy threw her forelegs around Rainbow, called it. After realizing that the hug wasn't ending on its own anytime soon, and was dangerously close to the sentimental tear zone, she pulled herself away. Alright, enough with the sappy stuff. You were asleep when I got here, and probably have work in the morning, so let's get to bed. Okay. Fluttershy stretched out on the couch, pushing Rainbow off. The bedroom's upstairs. I'll sleep down here. Yeah, no, Rainbow said. That's not happening. The couch is mine for as long as I'm here. Fluttershy put up her hooves. Fight me for it. Rainbow laughed. Fluttershy, not that I think you could ever look intimidating, but you look way too happy to pull that look off. Fluttershy scowled and took a few swipes at the air, which caused Rainbow to double over in laughter. Okay, never mind, that's even worse. Although Fluttershy's attempts at intimidation was nothing short of laughable, Rainbow yielded. She walked up the stairs, turning towards Fluttershy as she did. Good night, Shy. Good night, Dash. Opening the door to the bedroom, Rainbow looked around, noticing the bed was almost as big as hers. She walked back to the stairs. Hey, Shy, your bed's pretty big. Wanna just split it? Fluttershy's head popped up from the couch. Aren't you worried that's kind of gay? Rainbow waved a hoof. Nope, I think I can safely say I'm done worrying about stuff like that. I left that part of me back in Cloudsdale. The end.